We are solidly in winter. I have been testing a bunch of winter gear, so let's talk about it. I'm gonna go through a massive list of things I've tried and what works and what hasn't worked so great. Welcome back, Pathless Peddlers, and if you're into cycling but not the competitive side of cycling, so gravel exploring, winter fat biking, the supple life, you have found your people, hit that subscribe button. The big barrier to cycling in winter is the clothing. You need a lot of it and it can get really expensive really fast. So probably the easiest part of the equation that I think I've nailed is layering on my bottom half of my body. So if I'm going out for a longer fat biking ride, I will wear bike shorts, and on top of that I'll layer really just actually this cheap inexpensive pair of fleece leggings. We got them at an army surplus store for like 15 bucks. But basically the inside has this kind of fleecy material that, provides a lot of warmth. On top of the bike short with the fleece, I wear some kind of other shell layer, and I've been trying 3 different things. This first piece is by Sport Hill. I bought this at a running store and they were selling it as like a winter running pant, and it's pretty thick, it's pretty windproof, and it has some fleeciness to it itself. It's got a nice tapered leg, so it works well for cycling, but definitely one of my most well-used winter pants. So 2 other pants I've been trying with various success, and I'll wear this on top of the fleece layer, is actually the fall pants from Kettle that I reviewed a couple months ago. So these are super light, not super windproof, but just enough to take the bite off, and works really well with that kind of fleecy layer. And again, it's got a nice tapered leg. So although not designed as a winter fat biking layer, it actually works well for that purpose when you layer it with other things. So getting a little bit more winter bike specific are these Old Man winter pants from Trek. These are pretty interesting. They've got a built-in gaiter, and this part wraps on the outside of your boot and kind of holds the pant down and really prevents snow from getting in, which is super useful because if you saw that video where I was falling and post-holing all the time, this pant did a great job in keeping my feet warm. Although it looks like a ski pant, it's actually not very insulated. So if you just wore bike shorts or whatever you wear and this on top, you're probably gonna be cold. So it does necessitate another kind of mid-weight layer to provide some warmth. One thing I wasn't a really big fan of is actually the fit. So interestingly, these are semi-fitted, so when you put them on, they're gonna fit like kind of like tight jeans, which is a weird thing to have, I think, at least for me, in winter clothing, when you want to put another insulating layer beneath it. So if you want room to layer, definitely consider sizing up, or just know that it's going to be a little bit more on the fitted side, which is both good and bad. Good insofar as it won't get stuck in your chainring or your tire and all that stuff. But if you run cold and this isn't enough for you, it could feel kind of like a sausage casing if you run another kind of thermal layer beneath this. I wish the fit on the Old Man Winter was just a little bit looser, or that it had a little bit more insulation in there so you didn't have to wear anything else underneath. But yeah, pants. So for the upper part of the body, what do I wear? What's worked, what hasn't worked? Your typical winter layering system, so some sort of base layer, then a mid-weight layer, and a shell if it calls for that. The 3 base layers I've tried is this really thin Ibex wool base layer. I've had this for years, works great, but isn't exactly the warmest. So when things get really cold, I reach for this Patagonia Capilene base layer, and what's great about it is that it's got an integrated hood. I love this baffling material. Really provides a lot of warmth for its weight. One base layer that's been new to me this winter that I've been testing out has been this base layer by Castelli. So this is a super technical base layer, and what that means is basically, it's engineered as such to give you optimal performance. So for example, here in the armpit area, it's all really light, airy mesh, so you can vent out a lot quicker under your arms. What I absolutely love about this base layer is actually the inside. I don't know if this will show it sufficiently, but it is super fleecy for such a thin material. You can't wear this by itself, but as a base layer, super effective. I think this is their long sleeve Flanders model. I'll put a link in the description below if you're super curious about it. So on top of the base layer, I will wear a simple hoodie of some sort. So this is a Patagonia Better sweater, I think that's what they call it, hoodie. But I found that I also really like this guy, which again is the Kettle hoodie that we reviewed in the fall. Makes a pretty good winter layer as well, as long as it's not too wet outside. But combine this with the base layer, it actually has pretty good thermal properties. And speaking of thermal properties, I will layer things like this Giro synthetic down vest. This works pretty well just to keep the torso warm, but still allows some breathability in the arms. And when it gets stupid cold, but I'm still active, something like this Patagonia, I think this is a Nano Puff hoodie, small, synthetic, so even if you sweat or it gets a little bit damp, it still will keep its thermal properties. And it's as you can see, it's a pretty thin layer, and I do this on purpose so I can layer it under the last piece on the top, and that is, I know it's bright, this Bontrager Old Man Winter Jacket. On the back of the hood, it's got some boa lacing, so that'll bring in this part around your head. The jacket itself is super visible. This is literally the brightest jacket I own. So the big common theme in this jacket is zippers. It's got 2 chest pockets. It's got all sorts of venting zippers. This is actually a pocket down here. Really windproof. Surprisingly, a little bit on the heavier side. So this is not your lightweight wind layer, but it's a lot more resistant to stronger winds and precipitation. When I ride with this, I'll have a seat bag or a pannier on the fat bike and bring this along with. Okay, almost there. So let's talk about gloves. Okay, first pair of gloves are these Sportful Flanders gloves. They're made with a out-dry material, I believe that's what they call it. Supposedly waterproof, supposed to keep your hands warm, and they do to an extent. I find definitely work great in the 30s, but once the weather starts to approach the mid-20s, these gloves are too cold, especially if you've got an extended downhill descent. So this, if you're super active and the weather is in the 30s and above, I like using these, no problem, but once I get into the 20s, these a little bit more questionable. So next pair of gloves I've been testing this winter are from Bontrager, and these are actually a system. It's these gloves, which they say go to about 20 degrees, and then below that you're supposed to use these mittens. These gloves are pretty nice, nice padded palm here. It's got a little pocket here so you can put arm warmers if that's your thing, or snacks. These are size medium, and my hands I feel like are pretty average, and these gloves feel a little tight to get on and off. And that's been my kind of general theme with the Bontrager stuff I've been trying, is that if you like a looser fit or are in between, definitely size up. They're so tight, in fact, that when I have the gloves on, it's kind of a real pain in the butt to get in the mittens. That said, these do provide pretty good warmth. I feel like these are pretty good to about the mid-20s, as long as I'm not doing a super long descent. Beyond that, the mitts work good up until the upper teens. And then things just kind of fall apart if you're out there long enough. So far, what I've found to be the most effective so far is using either a thinner glove like the Showers Pass waterproof knit glove, or even the Bontrager glove or the Sportful glove, and using that with bar mitts. Honestly, that is the only way I've been able to keep my hands warm for any length of time beyond an hour, especially as the temperatures dip below 20 degrees. Beyond that, I found that a standalone glove, standalone mitt just won't cut it. You need some kind of bar mitt or pogie. So let's finally talk about the boot. This is really what kicked it off, just because I have a hard time keeping my feet warm during the winter, and I really wanted to find a good solution this winter for my toes. And so I reached out to both 45 North and the folks at Trek Bontrager, and they sent their boots. Let's talk about this guy first. This is Red Wing edition of the 45 North Wolfhammer boot. If you saw my first look video at these two boots, one of the things I did not like about the 45 North boot was that it didn't have a cleat cover, and if you walked around, the SPD bit would kind of jangle. But I did find a solution to that. I will put a link to that below, and this has worked pretty well for me. Beyond that, not a whole lot has changed with my general impressions. This boot is really easy to get on and off, and I find that I can actually walk a fair amount with this boot. So using their foot measurement tool, usually I am a size 42. With their tool, they recommended I get a 43, so this is what this is. And in the 43, I can run two thin socks, or thin and kind of a medium thick sock, but then that's about the outer limit. So if you like to wear more socks or include bags or something, then definitely size up a lot more. If I wanted to do that, I probably should have gone with the 44. But as it is with the 43, I'm usually wearing this with like a medium weight sock. Okay, so how does this boot perform in the cold? Typically, the way I ride is I probably don't go out for more than 2 hours. It seems as if, depending on how cold it is, that's about my limit physically. One thing I've learned this winter is that there's a huge difference between that range from 32 to about 20, and then 20 and below. Almost all this gear that I've talked about works great in that, freezing to about 20-degree temperature, but below that, my time outside is really limited. So with these guys, I find that as long as it's about 25 and warmer, I can go out for about 2 hours. Once it hits the teens, for me, my toes get cold within about 45 minutes to an hour, and I have to turn back really quickly. If you're doing a really long ride, multiple hours, multiple days, and it's gonna drop to 0, then these boots probably aren't for you unless your feet are super warm for some reason. I do find this pretty good for the way I use it, which is commuting around town, doing short errands, or going out for a ride no longer than 2 hours outside. For me, these fit the bill as long as the temperatures are 20 and above. So let's talk about these guys. These are the Old Man Winter boots from Bontrager. If you guys remember from the previous video, these have an interesting design insofar as there is a bootie, which is essentially acts as your large sock, which goes into the boot. So it's a system. Generally, the fit of this boot is going to be on the tighter side. I would recommend sizing up at least 2, if not 3 sizes. This is a size 44. Usually my typical shoe size is a size 2. With that extra size, this boot is much improved. There's more wiggle room, more space for a warm pocket of air, and it would keep my toes warmer longer. In terms of its capabilities compared to the 45 North, if I were to say one was warmer than the other, I actually found the Bontrager one a little bit warmer. I think that is because of its removable sock system. There was just like another pocket of air that would keep my toes marginally warmer than the 45 North one. These boots are also slimmer all around, so if you want to go on a winter road ride, this would probably be the more appropriate boot. However, it's not all puppy dogs and rainbows. There were some issues with this boot. Primarily, one is the sizing. Definitely size up at least 2 sizes. Number 2, these boots are super stiff and less comfortable to walk in compared to the 45 North boots. So if you're looking for a more all-rounder boot, it probably wouldn't be this one. Third thing I didn't like about this boot, which is probably the biggest bummer, is like this boot is really hard to get into. Even sizing up 2 sizes, you have to do some acrobatics with your toe and stand with like the full weight of your body just to get the boot in. So a total pain in the butt to put on and take off. That said, once your foot is in there is a lot of room. It's just like the angle in which you go into the boot and kind of the bulkiness of the heel here. My foot just kind of gets hung up and I have to put all this body weight just to get it into the boot. So in terms of ease, this is definitely the clear loser. But in terms of warmth, I did find this one warmer. So it's kind of a weird bummer. So which of the two do I reach for the most? If I'm just going in and out of the house really quickly, running an errand, going to the library, dropping off mail, stuff like that, I find myself going to the 45 North boot almost all the time. And that's primarily because it is so easy to get on and off despite its bigness. That said, if I'm going out for a ride, want to be out there for over an hour, I find I gravitate towards this boot more, just because this kind of double layered system does seem to keep my toes marginally warmer. Again, from both these boots work great in that low 20s to 32 range. Both are about par, but once it dips below 20, both the boots kind of fall apart. This one seems to fall apart less. So whereas, in the 45 North, I'd really start to feel my toes at about 45 minutes, this might buy me another 15 minutes. that's what I got in terms of this midwinter gear review. I hope it was helpful. Again, all the links are going to be in the descriptions below. I think if I were to pull out my two or three most favorite pieces from this whole pile of clothing, it would definitely be the Castelli base layer. That thing is amazing. The Bontrager Old Man Winter jacket. I love its visibility, its heavier weight and windproofness. Awesome winter jacket. And actually the cheap $15 fleece leggings, which work great with all the pants. So those are my three picks from this ginormous pile of winter stuff. So let me know what you guys think. How do you guys layer when it's the winter? Do you guys see that division as well when temperatures dip below 20? It seems like I just need a different class of gear when it gets that cold. This stuff works okay, 20 and above, but once it's in the teens or negatives, just not cutting it for me, at least. So if you guys have any questions, leave those in the comments below. And as always, if you like this content, consider supporting the channel via the PayPal and Patreon. And as always, keep the supple side down.